for joining today. We're just going to kick off with some introductions and some general housekeeping. So today on the call, we've got Chris Lyons. He's the Microsoft Territory Channel Manager for Microsoft, Tech for Social Impact. We've got myself. I'm an account director for Exquitech. I've got my colleague, James Belsey, who's one of our senior account managers. And then we have Ziad, who's here from our cybersecurity team. So anybody who has any questions, if they could put those in the question and answer section, we will try and answer those as we're going through, but there is some time at the end for live question and answers. As you can see, the agenda, starting off with the introductions, and then I'll hand over to Chris. He's going to give you an overview of Microsoft Tech for Social Impact. Then I'm going to set the scene with regard to Zero Trust and some findings around security. And then we're going to talk about what we need to do around implementing the technology, and then how we secure not-for-profit data. There's some offers from both Microsoft and Exquitech. And then we're going to dive into any questions that anybody may have afterwards. So, Chris, if I can, I'll hand over to you just to give us an intro on Tech for Social Impact.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. If you just flick onto the next slide, we can kick off. There we go. Perfect. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining this morning or this afternoon. God, my day's gone very, very quickly. It's a privilege to be here and to speak to you guys. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk about what we're doing at Microsoft to help you drive your missions. We think that the power of technology has got such an important place to help change this sector and really transform. Nobody ever goes and donates money to your charity, whether that be helping children or animals or the planet, and says, oh, I really want this to go on Office 365 licenses. They want to go and help your mission, whatever that may be. I've got the pleasure of working as a territory channel manager within our Tech for Social Impact team, which means I get to work with amazing customers every day and amazing partners such as Exquitech. Next slide, please, Steve. And if you just click play, it should hopefully build. And Microsoft, if you just click again, Steve, hopefully it should. If not, it doesn't matter.
It's just playing.
It's playing. Okay, no worries. There is some text that comes up. If not, I'll do a spinning world. But as we look at our mission as Microsoft to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more, this sector is at the heart of that. As I say, we are there as a team to help you achieve more. The technology we provide you needs to be affordable, it needs to be relevant, and it needs to be really accessible. And we work with our partner ecosystem to allow you to do that. Next slide, please, Steve. There we go. And again, there was text. And again. So I just want to talk through what is Tech for Social Impact. We are an industry-specific team that is focused on non-profit. We are a global team that helps all different shapes, sizes of organizations in every single corner of the world. As I say, our technology needs to be really relevant. We understand you use your technology very different than the way a bank would or a retail outlet would. So we need to make sure that our technology is really relevant and it's adaptable for you guys. We need to make sure you're using it in the right way. So capacity building is a huge element of what we do within Tech for Social Impact, and we need to make it secure. Hence the whole topic of this conversation today. We need to make sure that your organization, your staff, your beneficiaries are really confident in the technology that you are using. We have an amazing partner ecosystem. Exquitech are just one example of that. We have 450,000 Microsoft partners globally that sell Microsoft technology and support Microsoft technology. But we only have a handful that really do this on purpose. And I can hand on heart say that Exquitech are doing this on purpose. They're not doing it by accident. They understand you as a sector, they understand your problems, your challenges, and ultimately what you want to do is drive that mission. And my favorite bit about working in Tech for Social Impact is our social investment model. So every single dollar that we make by selling our licenses into non-profits goes back into the sector. So we take away our costs and we put them dollars back in, and it may be in humanitarian action, helping floods or wars. It may be AI for good, which is a huge initiative we've got going on at the moment, or it could be in affordable housing or other good causes around the globe. Next slide, please, Steve. So just to bring this into perspective, last year, Microsoft Tech for Social Impact gave back $4.7 billion in grants or discounted software and services. Now, to put that into perspective, if we were an aid-giving country, so Microsoft Tech Social Impact was an aid-giving country, we'd be number 11 or 12 in the world. And Norway and Denmark are in 9 and 10. So we're coming after them fast. That's what we're trying to do really, really rapidly. And the only way we can do that is by spreading the message around Tech for Social Impact. You see that number at the bottom, 375,000 charities that have taken advantage of our discounts. And if you scale that to the UK, there's about 32,000 that have taken advantage of our discounts. Now, in the UK alone, there's 170,000 charities. So quick maths, there's nearly 140,000 organisations out there that are not taking advantage of the discounts and the grants that we offer. So if you do anything from today's call from my section, please make sure that you're registered to Microsoft and you're getting the access to them grants and them discounts. Next slide, please, Steve. So this is our mission. And our mission in TSI is to bring the power of AI to social impact organisations everywhere. It wouldn't be a Microsoft presentation without mentioning AI. It's come on pretty hot, as you probably all realised, in the last couple of years. And I, hand on heart, think that this sector can benefit from any more. Next slide, please, Steve. The reason being, before I go into this one actually, is that I think passionately that AI can help this sector is because we have, one, the best partners that can help you do this, and two, we have real use cases to how AI can help you. No charity has ever come to me and said, I've got loads of money and loads of time and loads of resource. And that's where our partner ecosystem comes in to help you. And that's hopefully where AI technology helps you with this as well. But most importantly, and I'll hand back over to the Exquitech guys now, is we need to do this securely. You need to put your trust in us as Microsoft, and we need to help handle your data, handle your very, very sensitive data in the sector to make sure that you go and achieve that mission. With that, Steve, I won't take up any more time, and I'll hand back over to yourselves to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the overview. Really insightful. We're obviously on the call today to talk about zero trust and security, specifically within the charity sector. So just to set the scene, I've spent over 25 years in the IT sector, working across a wide spectrum of organisations, from small local charities to large, complex corporate organisations. This breadth of experience has given me a unique perspective on how different organisations approach to technology and data and security. In the charity sector today, I'm seeing a number of recurring challenges. Many organisations are under-resourced when it comes to IT and data protection, and they're handling increasingly sensitive information. So that could be donor data, it could be service user records or financial data. There's also a growing reliance on cloud platforms since COVID and third-party tools, which introduces new risks if they're not managed properly. Cyber threats are becoming more and more sophisticated. Even small charities are finding themselves targeted. So the need for practical, scalable and affordable security strategies has never been greater. So that's what we're going to look to talk about today. So let's talk about the state of security in today's world. So the Microsoft Digital Defense Report, it's an annual publication that provides a comprehensive analysis of evolving cyber threat landscape. The report offers insights and guidance to help enhance security and for charities to stay ahead of risks. So some of the key points in the report are on the screen now. So 600 million identity attacks take place every single day. What's really interesting is that 99% of these attacks are password based. So the good news is that multi-factor authentication blocks most of these types of attack. There's blurred lines between nation-state threat actors and cyber criminals. So nation-state threat actors are conducting operations for financial gain and enlisting the aid of cyber criminals to collect intelligence. So it's getting harder to tell who's behind an attack and whether it's about money, politics, or both. Among customers, Microsoft observed a 2.75 times increase in human-operated ransomware encounters. So most prevalent initial access technique remains phishing. In more than 90% of cases where attacks progressed to the ransom stage, the attacker had leveraged unmanaged devices on the network. So this underscores the need for device management. So the fight against impersonation is getting significantly more difficult due to the increasing ease of access of deepfake technology. So for those of you who don't know, deepfake technology uses things like artificial intelligence to create highly realistic but fake videos, images, or even audio by swapping faces or mimicking voices to make it appear as though someone said or did something they never actually did. The speed, scale, and sophistication of cyber attacks is increasing rapidly. When someone falls victim to a phishing email, the average time for an attacker to access their private data is just 1 hour and 12 minutes. The global scale is astounding. Microsoft is seeing nearly double the amount of passwords attacks, growing from 4,000 to 7,000 per second in the same time frame year after year. The number of organized attack groups is increasing. Microsoft is now tracking over 1,500 significant threat actors. That's a 5-fold increase from 300 they tracked in 2023. So if that hasn't scared everybody enough, we're also facing unprecedented complexity, making cyber jobs harder. Today's charities often struggle with a disconnected collection of fragmented tools. They're expected to stitch these tools together to make sure that the data and insights flow seamlessly and to get everybody working efficiently. Add to it the global security talent shortage organizations are facing. Apparently, there's a 4.8 million security professionals need worldwide, increasing about 19% year on year. You can add all this to the challenge of a highly complex regulated environment. Microsoft track on average about 250 regulatory updates every single day. It's an unfortunate truth that cyber attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated, with bad actors growing both in number and in skill. Not-for-profit are experiencing these trends firsthand, finding themselves the 4th most frequented targets of nation-state actors detected by Microsoft. With remote and hybrid work now the norm, not to mention the increase in popularity of bringing your own device, provisioning models, the attack surface has expanded throughout endpoint expansion. Despite this, many of the security tools out there are costly, inefficient, and complex. And as a result, not-for-profits are feeling that they're not able to invest enough in cyber security. So facing this reality, how then is a not-for-profit supposed to improve security within their budget? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to my colleague James, who's going to give you some insight as to what zero trust is and why it matters.
Thank you very much, Steve. Pleasure to be here with everyone today. I'm just going to go through a couple or 3 slides, set the scene before I hand over to the real expert in the room, which is Ziad, who heads up our cyber security team at Exquitech. So let's dig into, I guess, at face value, what zero trust means, why it might matter for you. So the first thing to kind of read off the page here is the concept is never trust, always verify. So if you consider that someone might already be in your network, the principle there is, well, just don't assume that they're okay because they're in the network. Let's verify that. And the other thing here to really take note is that the zero trust isn't like a off-the-shelf product. It can be a mindset shift if you think from an internal user perspective and getting people on board with that. But it's a consultancy piece. You need to work out in your own organization what suits your practice and how you go about deploying that and rolling it out properly. So so first principle, let's talk about the 3 principles really. So verify explicitly. That means, authenticate every user, device request, context-aware access in terms of, is that a trusted device? Have they used that device before? Is that location, the location they normally sign into, are in a different region, a different country? And the tools around that we know well, MFA is always discussed, and multi-factor authentication is a great first step. But then we go a step further and we look at conditional access rules around that. So a conditional access rule might be that in order to access your data in your environment, the user needs to go through a few checks to make sure that's a legitimate request. That could be a device you trust, a location that is trusted, or the risk of the sign-in. So if we think about if someone's trying to sign into a cafe on a device that hasn't been seen by that organization before, that's going to base that as a risky policy. So they're going to ask them to verify that additional level. If we look at least privilege as well, so here we really need to be checking and limiting access to what's only needed. And the amount of times that we walk into organizations and they've set up a group SharePoint or a Teams folder and everyone just has access to it in the organization. And if someone's breached at whatever level, that's full access to your entire data right there. It can also extend to applications and systems within your organization as well. So we really encourage people to review access rights and limit them to always the least privilege access. If you think about the administration rights as well, we really need to go through our systems and ensure that people haven't got increased admin rights on devices, on systems within 365. And again, that's a continually audited process as well. And then tools is how many organizations here have multiple cloud applications, potentially multiple systems, multiple databases. Again, the same principle applies. It's not just access everything and there you go. You've got to think about who should be accessing it based on their role. And the last one here is assume breach. So plan as if someone's already in your environment, they shouldn't be, and limit the ability to move across systems with ease to access data, and start working with people or understand tools that can help you prevent that. Because even with good defenses, you have to plan for the possibility that something will slip through, and the data suggests that from what we see. So assume a breach means designing systems that contain damage and detect unusual activity quickly. So like the example a minute ago about there's someone signing in from a location that is not typical, or they're signing from devices that often aren't seen by that user or not logged into for a period of time. So we need to think of that mindset as well when we adopt this principle. We know the sector's being targeted. We heard a lot of data there from Microsoft's big data, global data. But if you look at the UK Pacific data, based off the UK government latest releases, over a third of UK charities reported a cyber attack in the last 12 months. So we know it's happening. So increasingly, unfortunately, cyber criminals are targeting the sector. If we look at data, so data's, of course, if you think from an internal perspective, it's important to you, it helps you run the mission, it's vital, but it's a trust aspect as well. We know from the customers we deal with that the data they hold is for very sensitive, either high network donations or very detailed data around donors. And then we break it down into the people they work and they serve. Data there is for very vulnerable people. So it's not just a case of thinking, well, they can't do much in my data and it's internal use. You've got to think about the trust of holding that data, that individual you're serving as well. And then breaches, they hurt. We've seen it. We've had the mispleasure really of dealing with our customers who have had cyber attacks, and it's truly damaging. And you can hear from, you know, when they speak to us about the accounts of what's happened, the effect it has on them serving their people, also from a personal perspective as well. So we know that if you can start thinking about cybersecurity, start adopting these methods, you're going to reduce the risk of breaches. It saves a lot of time, a lot of money, which you want to be diverted to better causes, and the reputational damage as well. So if we move on to the final slide here, so that's the message really. Even with strong defenses, attackers sometimes get in. We see it, we see the data, we deal with it on a daily basis. And when we do offer the initial consultation audits with our customers in the sector, they're often relying on, you know, antivirus software that might not be updated, hasn't been reviewed for 6, 18, 24 months since the organization was started. And they're relying on pretty basic systems, but we know now that in this era, it's not enough. So questions we should ask really to get going is laptops, so lost or stolen laptops. We want to be asking ourselves, if you're in that scenario, can you say that you can wipe and delete that data remotely without having to touch that device? Is the device encrypted? Do you know that? Compromised user credentials, so a phishing email, tricks, a fundraiser, could be anyone in the organization. If you haven't gone through the levels of access and you're considering what applications they have access to, what folder structure they have access to, that person now has access to the full systems within whatever that user's been given. So we want to have a default stance of just always assume the attacker is inside, and we check for those parameters, and we limit the access. If you don't have that for, or that isn't reviewed in your organization, you should start considering that. We look at malware as well as another question to ask, like how are you backing up your data? How frequently do you check the rate of backup? Is it stored in a different location to your primary? How long can you live without your data and critical systems? Have you got a business continuity plan? Have you got a disaster recovery plan? Do you know how long it would take to get the core database back up and running? If you don't know the answer to these questions, you should start to consider. And the final one we see quite frequently, I guess, within this sector is legacy applications. And there's some big players in this market that have applications that have been around for a long time that run critical process for your sector, and the assumption is that that's all great and that's being looked after. But if you haven't reviewed those applications, if you haven't asked the questions, then that's where you should start considering. And the final bit, the message at the bottom there is it's a concept from the physical world to digital world. We all have locks on our doors. Unfortunately, some of us have ID badges to get into doors internally as well. We have background checks. and we've got to bring that same mindset into the digital world. So that's the end for me, just to kind of set the scene on. I know we've got varying levels of people on the call today, but just to set the scene about what zero trust really means. And now I'm going to hand over to the man in the room, Ziad, that is head of our cybersecurity practice, deals with this daily. So I'll hand over to you, Ziad. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and hello, everyone. So in the next few slides, we will be going on how to implement the zero trust with Microsoft 365. Now, as we move forward, it's critical to consider, how can we pivot on a proactive AI strategy, focusing on access, devices, and data, right? So zero trust architecture is a foundation and a baseline that you would want to have in place before considering moving with that next step. So one of the main challenges in that complex and disconnected tech stack can significantly, limit the potential of AI, right? And to fully leverage on AI, we need to streamline and integrate our technology infrastructure. So a few questions to ask ourselves would be like, do we have a comprehensive zero trust security, right? Why would we need to ask this? Because simply AI is going to introduce new vectors, for security risks, things like data breaches, financial losses as an outcome of, those data breaches. And in the charity sector, it can also have reputational damage, which we definitely would want to avoid. So implementing a comprehensive zero trust security, especially using anomaly detection, can definitely tighten access controls and minimize all of that security breaches. Now, another question important to also, consider is whether our endpoints, the devices that the users are working with from, whether they are a company-owned devices or a personal devices, and whether those apps that the people are working from are managed and, more importantly, easily managed, right? So managing the endpoints applications effectively is very critical for AI success, especially nowadays we see, patches coming out more frequently. So we would want to ensure that all of these devices and apps are patched, the security gaps are patched with that. And a modern tech stack would, allow IT teams to enhance the data loss prevention controls. They would be able to apply robust data governance and enforce even data retention policies across, how things are retained, who has access rights to do that, and so forth. And the last thing that I would ask is, do I have the right tools to fuel productivity, right? So having the right mix of tools is essential to improve productivity and break down silos, which will allow us to boost collaboration. So these tools will help the people to get more value out of AI, while we ensure that the organization's security remains a top priority, as it should have always been. Now, with Microsoft 365 E3, or even with the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Microsoft's recommended trust security foundations can be met, right? And can be covered. And that's going to be a big benefit, especially for the charity sector, since Microsoft is offering you high discounts on Business Premium and other licenses, just to ensure that you have all of these tools on your hands to bring this to life. So the way we look at enabling that AI-powered secure productivity is three things. So first, we want to protect our data, especially that Copilot, for instance, is going to be interacting with data. So we want to ensure that the zero trust security is embedded and implemented before we go to that. We want to simplify the IT management so that we can accommodate for this modern workspace where we have people working from remote places, different locations. They might not be on your network, and they might even be working on a personal device. So we want to ensure that we can manage the applications on their personal device. And then what that will yield to is, the power of AI productivity. So the people will be ready to take on AI from a security perspective and leverage on all of the benefits and, the capabilities that they will be able to do just by leveraging on those, the technology. Now, today, as we speak, the best way to get ready for Copilot is to really get on Microsoft 365 Business Premium E3. And that will allow us to build an essential foundation for this modern work. So Microsoft 365 brings together in a single solution, which is a big benefit for IT, lowering down the administrative cost of managing, multiple vendors, which adds complexity. And all of this will be done in a single solution that allows us to have this foundational capability that is required, which includes things like identity protection, application management, definitely securing devices, and on top of that, protecting enterprise data so that you can be ready for that AI shift. So with Microsoft 365, you can get ready for that new era of work through just 3 simple steps. So the first step is really just implement the Zero Trust foundations. Microsoft has published a lot of documentation to guide, any organization on what steps to follow. They really made things simple, and they've been in that space for the past 6 years, preaching, in the industry about the importance of having Zero Trust architecture. So when we talk about the Zero Trust Foundation, as James and Steve have mentioned, it's all about, verifying explicitly. So instead of giving the trust to a user, to a token that was issued after the user authenticated, just verify explicitly. If there's a change, if there's anything that's suspicious, like a person logged in from UK, and then after a short time they logged in from another country, maybe have this token expire. So basically Microsoft, they will always do continuous evaluation of access, and that token can even expire whenever there's, a red flag. And verifying explicitly is not the only thing you would want to do, but also you would want to ensure that you are applying least privilege access. So to zero down on risks on the level of access and to eliminate, the risk, it's a good principle to give people just enough access that will allow them to do their full job without giving them access to things they might not need, or they might need just once, across the year. And then, of course, you need to assume the breach. So you don't need to rely just on the tools in place and say, I have a good setup, everything is running fine. No, you need to assume breach. You need to have the right tool that allows you to investigate some logs, incidents, so that you can have an early detection of, a potential compromise. Now, the second thing you would need to do is streamline endpoint management. So when we talk about streamlining endpoint management, here we're looking at protecting the devices in Microsoft. And in both Microsoft 365 Business Premium and E3, you will get Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. The capabilities can vary between the two, but you will surely get all P1 features in those 2 licenses. And what's really nice about how Microsoft structured the licensing is that they will not limit you to 1 device per user. Instead, they will accommodate to the modern workspace, where we know that every person works from at least 2 devices, and therefore they were generous enough to give you a coverage of 5 devices from that just 1 license. So in other words, there's no limitation and nothing blocking us from being able to offer protection to even personal devices. And the third thing would be, that we would want to adopt an endpoint management solution that can support all of the endpoints that people work from. So whether it's a Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS or Android, you are covered. And on top of that, you can also manage the applications, specifically the Microsoft applications, to ensure that they are being patched in time. Now, once the first 2 milestones are achieved, the third thing to look into is, the return on this investment that you've done after securing things. So then you can drive the productivity and collaboration across your organization so that you can allow people unlock and reach new heights with that AI tool. Now, underneath each of these stages, we have a stack of products designed to work together. So this brings us back to the point where we said that Microsoft can be your one-stop to have all of this. And on the right column, you can see that we have mapped the specific solutions or technologies that will allow us to achieve those three, let's say, milestone or goals. So starting with Zero Trust Foundation, you will be able to, do and deploy Windows Auto Patch. So Windows Auto Patch, if you're not familiar with it, it's going to basically allow us to automatically manage updates for the Windows 10, Windows 11 devices. It's going to allow us to also do the same across the Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise. So here we're talking about things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and of course, it will extend that to Edge and Teams. And when we look at Microsoft Entra ID, Microsoft Entra ID is going to allow us to build conditions on top of a user's sign-in request. So we will be assessing things like what location are they trying to access this resource from? And is this application a critical one? And if so, what type of additional controls do I want to apply, right? Now, when we look at the streamline endpoint management, there's going to be 4 main features under the E3 that are leveraged, and we'll discuss and dive deeper into that on the next slides. And then when it comes to productivity, you already know that the E3 and the Business Premium is going to provide your users all of the productivity tools that they need to be able to be productive and collaborate through. Now, this is how each of them are brought to life. So if we were to look at, the steps followed over here and going back to the fact that there are 3 things we want to achieve, the first and the starting point would be to get a Zero Trust Foundation in place. We would need to do 3 things to allow this to happen. So starting with managing identities and securing them. This is a very important point because from a cybersecurity aspect, the first thing that you would try to attack and leverage on is the identities. It's going to be the easiest, first step to take and to step and put a foot into the organization. So as we've seen in the other slide, Microsoft Entra ID will play a key role over here. And it will allow us to put our conditions, to do some tightening, have 2-factor authentications, maybe change the frequency or revoke a token whenever there's a need to do so, just to ensure that secure access is granted. And we can also do things like limiting session and access controls if needed. The second thing that we would aim to do under the Zero Trust Foundation is to really defend against threats on multi-platforms. So multi-platform security, is enabled by Microsoft Entra ID. It's also enabled through Defender for Endpoint and through Purview Information Protection. All of these will work together just to secure your identities, devices, and your sensitive information at scale. And then with Intune, we will be achieving the Windows Auto Patch, and we can also have some beneficial features like universal print, where you can manage all your work devices and, enable BYOD scenarios. Now, lastly, when we look at Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 apps, these are connected and all employees connect to them across all devices. While, Copilot will introduce the power of AI to employees safely. So boosting productivity and collaboration unlocks new patterns of work. But before jumping into the details, we would like to meet you where you are. So would you, prefer start a particular stage, zero trust foundation, endpoint management, production, productivity, and collaboration? That's a decision to be taken, but these three things need to be done surely to ensure, readiness for the AI adoption. So a zero trust strategy might look complex at first if you think about, its entire architecture. But the essence of this approach is really simple. So it goes, about being proactive and having this integrated security control across your entire environment, which will always be following three key principles. So the first one, verify explicitly. You just don't know, what you don't know, right? So always make security decisions using all available data points, including the identity, the location, even the device health. So in Intune, we can leverage on the device compliance state, which can tell us if a device is non-compliant, depending on the policy that you have configured. That could be because maybe the hard drive is not encrypted. It might be that the antivirus is not working and being up to date on that device, or any other checklist that you have included. And then we want to have data classification to just protect, those files and emails that are being sent across the organization, and maybe even sent outside of your organization. So that's the first principle. The second principle would be least privilege access. So limiting access, with just-in-time and conditional access policies. So when we say just-in-time access, this means that rather than giving a person access to a specific role at all times, I would just have them request access. And then I'll put a window through which that permission is elevated, or that role is elevated, right? So this will not come under the E3 or Business Premium, but this can surely be covered through Entra Identity Plan 2. It's very important when factoring it into the least privilege access, but as a starting point, you can start with the conditional access policies, which is a capability of the Plan 1. And now lastly, what we discussed is assuming breach. Just minimize the blast radius with this micro-segmentation. Ensure you're having end-to-end encryption. So not just on the level of the device, but also consider encrypting emails that are being communicated using Microsoft Information Protection, for example, and have the right tools, the right dashboards that would allow you to continuously do monitoring, customize notifications as per your need and expertise, and also automate threat detection and response. Now, the solution that enables a zero trust foundation within Microsoft 365 provides an approach to do all of these things, right? So we'll be able to secure and manage identities. We'll be able to defend against threats on multiple platforms through Defender for Endpoint. And we will be able to protect sensitive information across your data estate by applying labels on Microsoft Information Protection through the AIP, so that your users can label documents, and based on that label level, it might be applying encryption, which is the protection, to ensure that if that file was accessed by someone who's unauthorized, they will not be able to open it. And this is always inherited to Copilot. So if on Copilot, let's say, for example, someone shared with me a document on OneDrive or SharePoint, which supposedly I shouldn't have access to it. So I'm from the business department, and someone from the HR shared an entire folder with me by mistake, okay? And this folder might contain payslips. So definitely, as someone out of the HR department, I shouldn't have access. I might have not been notified about, being granted access to that folder. But as soon as the IT provided me with the Copilot, I might be curious to know if Copilot can bring me this type of information. Now, while I do have access, and this means Copilot can access that folder, What I don't have is permissions on that label. So that label could be something like HR only. Because that label is in place and encryption is in place, Copilot will inherit the same permissions that I have, and it won't be able to access that document. Hence, it will not retrieve information back to me. So here just delving, in more depth around the things that we discussed in the slide that was just before that. We're going to start by looking at Entra ID. So Entra ID was formerly called Azure Active Directory. And we'll look at how you can secure and manage your identities. So the first thing you would need to do is enable strong authentication to your cloud environment. And one thing to keep in mind is that Entra ID can act as an identity provider. So it can replace the authentication that's handled by a third-party SaaS application to unify all of that authentication under one directory, which is Entra. And the benefit of doing that is that any conditional access policy enforced will apply not just to your Microsoft 365, but also to your SaaS applications. And what conditional access policies will do is that they will verify every access attempt based on your configuration. But if you're applying the zero trust, you would be looking at things such as device health, user location, and what application is being accessed. And followed by, the actions that are determined by your organization control policy, you might want to just allow access if the person is coming from, a recognized device that's compliant from UK and to an application which is not critical. So why challenge them with a second factor of authentication? But in other cases, you might choose to challenge them with an MFA or maybe limit their access. So let's say I'm accessing a SharePoint site from a personal device. You might want to apply session control so that I cannot download files from that SharePoint, as an example. Or if you see that, the user risk score is high, if you're on the Entra ID Plan 2, you can automate, a password reset on that device, on that user. Now, with the multi-factor authentication, you will be able to use phishing-resistant MFA and passwordless methods instead of challenging the user with an OTP being sent to their mobile number, right? So you have the option to define what method the user should be challenged to, comply with if you found their access to be suspicious or risky. And lastly, Microsoft performs continuous access evaluation, which means that access tokens can be revoked based on critical events and policies evaluation rather than, just relying on a token lifetime expiry. So normally a token would have at least a few hours of lifetime, probably even more than that. But in Microsoft, the token is rechecked every hour. So this means that a valid token can expire before that lifetime expires in case Entra detects any suspicious or risky activities, like someone doing an impossible travel where 1 minute back they signed in from location or country A, and after a few minutes from another country. Now, the endpoint would still remain one of the most targeted, attack surfaces, second to the identities, especially as new and sophisticated malware and ransomware continue to be, prevalent threats in the cyberspace. So ransomware continues to persist and evolve, and this will contribute to financial damage in case you lost some critical data that you don't have a backup of on OneDrive, as an example. And this will yield to an impact which will be definitely felt across the organization. And we see that, even in the charity sector, a lot of ransomware attacks happen. It's not just, a type of threat that's targeting the public infrastructure on its own. And unfortunately, the level of sophistication of these kinds of attacks and, the speed at which they evolve keeps on growing. And that requires a different approach to security that Microsoft is accommodating to and providing solutions to. So in Microsoft, we are building security on a cloud-native technology. There's a deep threat and human intelligence behind it that can easily scale, and that's an advantage for all of the Defender customers. So it really requires, that robust prevention that uses all of that AI and machine learning to just rapidly stop these threats and to provide a solution that enables a zero trust approach. So in Microsoft, we are committed to delivering, the best of breed, multi-platform and definitely multi-cloud security for all of the organizations across the globe. And the aim is really to offer a simplified and comprehensive protection that prevents breaches and at the same time enables customers to innovate and grow. Now, if we were to talk about protecting sensitive information, when you're using Microsoft 365 services, you should know that Microsoft has already built information protection into those services. So this is a SaaS solution. Microsoft is taking care of it. However, we should apply encryption that allows us to protect the data while it's at rest on a device. And this protection will remain on the file or on the email as it is being in transit or as employees are working on it. So with Microsoft 365, it becomes easy to discover and classify sensitive data that can reside across, not just your Microsoft 365 estate, but also might extend out of it to your on-prem repositories if you still have, let's say, a file share over there, or if you have a third-party SaaS application. However, you would need to go on the plan to be able to extend that capability outside, but you can start with a good foundation on the E3 and Business Premium to just have, AIP labels covering your environment and discovery done across M365. And this is a very important and pivotal point because, once you know your data, only then you can benefit from using Microsoft's built-in labeling and protection experience. That is the core productivity solution around protecting data. So apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or even services like SharePoint, Exchange, and even Power BI, they use these core workloads instead of, a bolted on and plug-in experience. So actually from the end user experience, it's a seamless integration. They would just see a sensitivity button added across these applications. And the good thing is that Microsoft's MIP does not limit us to, only Microsoft tools or Microsoft extensions, but it also can extend the functionality across other things, especially if you're like on the Adobe Pro, or if you're not, you can just have the unified labeling client on the Windows machine and users can use the file explorer to label any other supported file. So when you take this approach, this will not only lower your cost, by eliminating the need of deploying and maintaining additional software, but also it will deliver better performance by just eliminating the need to load add-ons every time a user launches an app or a service. And now that, your sensitive data is classified, so the data can be either classified by the user themselves choosing a label on a document, or if you're on the higher plans, we can have it done automatically based on classifiers. So classifiers can look for things like, personal identifiable data, which is very important in the charity sector. And depending also on your type of intellectual properties and identifiers, we can train it or customize it to pick up these things and apply the respective label. But once you do that, what you will want to establish is a protection plan to address all of the risk of accidental or inappropriate sharing of those information, whether it was done through, one of the applications like Exchange, Teams, or OneDrive, or whether the user is just doing it through the device. Now, as part of Microsoft's information protection, we do offer you the DLP capabilities across Office 365. So that means in the Business Premium and the Microsoft 365 E3, you will be able to build DLP rules so that when a specific condition is met, an action is taken. So let's say I'm working on a document which is labeled as confidential internal, and by mistake I didn't realize that, and I was attempting to email it to an external person. So here the condition will be that an internal document is being sent externally, and therefore the logical action to do is to block that from happening. So in that case, with through those easy steps that are taken and simple rule, I can block an accidental data leakage from happening. Now, when looking at how this integrates with Copilot, in the DLP rules, you can also create rules to say what type of labels Copilot can access for a specific set of group of users. So if you want to ensure that, so I'll give you an example. Let's say you don't want to apply protection and therefore encryption on the label that is used by HR, the one we discussed earlier, HR only. You might want to drop protection just to keep things simpler, or you're not ready to, encrypt data, just want to ensure that it's clear who has access to that data. But at the same time, you want to ensure that people coming from other departments and prompting Copilot for information will not go to that HR file in case that person has access to it. So what we can do in the DLP for Copilot is say that if a person is not part of the HR organization, then Copilot cannot access any file they might have been given access to, and it's labeled as HR. So by doing that, we would be achieving a few things, which is encrypting the data and protecting, accidental leakage of data or accidental of access to data we shouldn't have access to, and to preserve the content over there. Now, to summarize all of this, Microsoft 365 E3 and the Business Premium will really give you all of the core security controls so that you can have a secure user journey, whether from logging into Microsoft 365 or to any other application, including the Copilot. And, to see what I mean about this, I would suggest we take a look at the typical user journey and, what an individual would experience as they use Copilot. And, the security and compliance functions working in the background. So when a user logs into Microsoft 365, their login is evaluated, as we said, using conditional access rules that you have set up for your organization, right? Now, these rules take into account factors, things like user and group membership, IP location, application being accessed, and all of that. And if a problem is detected, it can and it will prompt the user to reset their to reset their password, or maybe block their access entirely. Now, on top of that, as we discussed, the continuous access evaluation will always be running in the back end to monitor any critical event and issue access tokens that can be revoked immediately if there's a change in the user's account or policy. So if you're updating your policies, this will take direct effect on any authentication that happened prior to that, right? You don't have to wait for the token to expire. Now, second, Copilot will only access, the data that the user has permission to view, similar to the scenario that we described earlier with the HR and the person coming from the business. And this is done using purview, where Copilot will inherit the sensitive label that is applied on the document. So assuming this time I'm still a person from the business department, and I asked Copilot to generate a report for me by looking at other business-related documents that are labeled as confidential/business only. So what Copilot will do is that as it's generating that report for me, let's assume that report is going to be in the format of Word. Before finalizing it, it will apply the highest label that's applied across all of the documents that it went through to obtain data. So if Copilot went through 3 types of business documents, and let's say 2 of them are labeled as internal, indicating no high confidentiality, and 1 labeled as confidential business only, what Copilot will do, it will label that report it generated as confidential business only. So it's going to inherit the sensitivity to that document that is being generated. Now here, security, especially when talking about data protection, is a top concern when introducing AI, because simply AI will be interacting with that data. So the security recommendations for an AI adoption is to really anchor the zero trust principle. And Microsoft has already provided us with, a practical roadmap and a clear guidance for zero trust that's found in their documentation. So by implementing the recommendations that they have put for us, as we introduce the AI tools and all of the companions around it, we are building a foundation of zero trust security. So this is a strategy that is being applied. It isn't, a product or a service, as Steve mentioned initially. It's a strategy, but it's also an approach in the way we design and implement the security principles to ensure that we are verifying explicitly using least privilege access and assuming the breach. So Microsoft can really help us in preparing, for AI tools and companions that build this zero trust foundation. And then we can introduce Copilot in stages from allowing web ground prompts. So when we say web ground prompts, this means that Copilot will bring the information from Edge, from the web, not from your environment. So we can start with allowing web ground prompts before allowing Microsoft 365 graph grounded prompts, which will reach out to your M365 environment to bring data and bring you back data response. So if you were to sum all of this, in one slide and what we are achieving by following all of these principles, we will be tackling those 5 things simultaneously. So we would be starting with, governing the access, where we describe that, when a user logs into Microsoft 365, they are challenged with a 2-factor authentication, continuous access evaluation is in place, and we are picking up all of the signals coming from the user, from their device, to determine what controls to apply before granting them that access. We are surely mitigating the device and the application risk. So if a user is accessing, for example, Microsoft 365 from a personal mobile device, we will be deploying app protection policies so that that user cannot take out any data from the application, to ensure that the application is, running on the latest version, which is patched and secure, before we give them access. And when it comes to the personal devices, we will ensure that the same is done, the device is secured, and we can also, wipe all of the work content if that device got lost. Now, the third thing is protecting emails, devices, and apps against those threats. So the Business Premium does offer you the Defender for Office, whereas the E3, you'd have to take it as an add-on, but you will get Exchange Online Protection as, a starting point, but we encourage you to go for the advanced capabilities found in Defender for Office Plan 1 to secure your emails. And that will also extend the protection across your Office 365 applications like Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. Defender will allow us to, enable the next generation capabilities across machines. We will also have the control around setting, attack surface reduction rules just to protect those devices. And then when it comes to the applications, we will be leveraging on MAM and Defender for Office capabilities to secure those apps. Now, the fourth thing that we would be doing is securing and governing data. That is done through the Microsoft Information Protection and the LP for Office 365, which is coming under Purview. So all of the interactions with Copilot are also, logged for auditing purposes. You can go back up to 6 months with the logs, so which will allow you, a good enough time to go back in. And this will also allow us to, monitor if there are any business or code of conduct violations for Copilot prompts. So through the SPM for AI, you will be able to have visibility on how users are interacting with the Copilot. And this will, also enable us to have some retention policies around the data that is no longer needed in the organization so that Copilot doesn't go back to that data when being prompted for some questions or insights. Now, when we think of AI, it's important to realize that AI is not just a tool introduced by the IT, but as a matter of fact, and based on the statistics, almost 80% of users bring their own AI to work, right? So I believe this is something that we might have done ourselves as employees at one point, especially when the organization was not offering us Copilot, and some users remain to do that. So this introduces a challenge, which is how can you, take control over that? And the first thing you would want to do before being able to control it is just to have the visibility and have the capacity to discover those AI apps before you can determine which ones should be sanctions and which ones should be unsanctioned to restrict user access. So with the E3 and Business Premium, you will have the capability to discover the use of the AI apps as a first starting point to secure and govern your data. Right? And this will all, bring us to, having a good security posture where we are ready to take on Copilot and have users work with Copilot in a safe manner. Steve, over to you.
I'll take Steve's position. Thank you very much, Siad. We got a lot of questions in the Q&A for you.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to take a look at them, see if you can answer them. If not, we'll leave them to the end and save them there. Steve, are you just going to drop straight to the special offers, or do you want me to cover the previous slide? I'm happy to stick where you're at.
Yeah, do you want to just cover yours off, and then we'll carry on and sort of we'll amend it according to how much time we've got.
Yeah, no problem. We want to get to the Q&A as quick as we can, so I will move through the next couple of slides pretty quick. In a second while I just bring this up. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll keep this fairly high level, and questions at the end we can deal with as well, but just to get to the point we can get the Q&A going and get those questions answered. So some best practice in securing data profit, but any data in your organization really these will apply to. So if we just move to some of the pillars we have, so I'll provide some, where to start, and that should get some thought going. And as I said, people like Ziad are out there, experts in this field, and they can help map this and bring it to life for your organization as well. So when we talk about data classification, data inventory, it's the obvious bit about understanding what data you hold: personal, financial, donor, beneficiary, operational. Start by looking at how you can classify the data based on the sensitivity. So what Ziad was speaking about there, making sure that data isn't leaving your organization or going into third-party AI models. That's a very common concern we have with our customers at the moment. If we look at the regulatory compliance as well, we've got in the UK, we've got GDPR, we have got the Charity Commission guidance, fundraising regulatory standards, safeguarding data obligations as well for vulnerable children and adults. So look at the regulatory compliance you're under, and use that as a good benchmark as well. You want to stay compliant with these organisations as well. Look at policies and governance and framework around that. So create or improve your policies you have. If you haven't got the policies, recognise that. Run the log, audit what you have, understand the gaps. Again, work with it. You might have some internal expertise or seek experts like Ziad on the call to help you piece that together. Things like data protection policies we spoke about. Another one that's we see quite commonly overlooked as well, and especially when we start looking at how organizations are using Copilot, is the retention labels around data as well. If you're going to start using AI, one thing is you don't want the old data for Copilot to query, but it's also from a good practice as well to keep that data cleansed and hold data that is still required. Get your acceptable use policies, incident response plans, and one as well, assign clear data ownership. So with the members of the team, DPOs, trustees, and stewards of that as well. So work internally on that program. We've gone through this access control, implement role-based access to systems and data, and limit data collection and retention to what's absolutely necessary. Time and time again, we're seeing people hold data that they don't really need to hold that long, or these people don't really need access to it. So let's start considering around that. Training and culture, in this sector specific, there's a real mix of individuals in an organization. Some are only working a couple of days a week, some are volunteers, right through to seasoned board level and people in between. So train staff, help them understand why data privacy is important, why the training is important. And we all love especially in the IT world, we love jargon. Let's get that away from those sessions, make it simple, make it digestible, make it actionable as well. Tooling, technology, get that in sync, get that right. Implement the basic controls to start. Speak to experts, speak to your expertise in house. Work out what you need to put in place. Basic things. Make sure your data is encrypted. Make sure it's backed up. And we touched on the whole piece around business continuity plans and DR plans. Everyone might be of a different thought, but again, we speak to a lot of organisations after the event where they didn't think it would happen to them, didn't think it was necessary, or never got round to it. So let's think about that as well. And then just the auditability and continuous improvement. So keep records of decisions, training and incidents. Set a simple data governance review cycle to start with for the smaller organisations. More mature might have that in place already. And then measure what matters. Breaches avoided is a good one to really try to work out a potential return, because when we are speaking about cybersecurity, it's not really a return on investment. Of course, it's hard to quantify that. It's about risk. It's how much you want to risk, how much you deem down that route. So, but it's a good benchmark. Staff trained, access reviewed. It's so common where once permissions are set, when that user joins an organisation, they're never really adjusted, and we see time and time again as the staff members gain promotions in an organisation, that isn't reviewed, and before you know it, they've got access to a lot of data they potentially should not need or should not want access to. We can speak a lot on this subject. We're lucky to have a data governance, privacy compliance team at Exquitech, years of experience contracting and consulting with large firms, working with KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, so very well seasoned, and they've seen a lot in this field. So if you're struggling in that area, we've got a lot of expertise that we're happy to answer and go into way more detail than I provided there. But just in the look of time we have here, wanted to make sure we got to the Q&A. With that said, Steve, I'll hand over to your part.
Brilliant, thanks, James. I just wanted to highlight to everybody who's on the call some of the offers that are available for not-for-profit organisations. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we've got some offers from Microsoft. You'll be aware that there's some business basic licenses for free. There's obviously significant discounts available on the licensing plans. Something that not a lot of organisations are aware of is the fact that Microsoft charity team provide $2,000 worth of free Azure credits. So if we're talking about AI, which is a big hot topic of conversation, you could potentially build an agent or some type of bot and use those credits, which could potentially then mean that you could have that service for no charge at all. You also get Power Platform licenses free. There's discounts on their Microsoft Dynamics, which is their CRM and ERP solution. And there's also an 8% discount available on any new Surface devices that they provide. So as a charitable partner and a Microsoft partner, what we do is any charitable organizations that we're working with, not only do we provide the Microsoft licensing at the discounted price, we actually provide it at our cost price. So when you see that there's an offer from Microsoft to provide charity licensing, we actually provide that at an even more discounted price. So the average cost, as an example, of a business premium license is about £4.50. We actually provide that to our clients for £4 per user. We've also got the availability to provide Azure credits offer. So we can provide, it says 10% there. In other cases, there's up to a 15% discount on Azure credits for charities that are using the Azure platform. We've also got access to funding from Microsoft. So pending the service that you're taking, Microsoft allocate pots of money for discovery sessions, for transformation sessions that we have access to. So we can make applications for free funding for charities for particular IT projects they may be looking to take on board. And we've also got the ability to engage Microsoft to conduct a free security assessment. So if anybody's interested in any of those offers, by all means reach out, but we will share this deck with you. A little bit about us as an organization. I'm not going to dive into too much detail around this because I know we're running out of time, but we do specialize in supporting the charity sector. From our perspective, cybersecurity is one of the big needs in this sector, and we also see that there's a need from a strategic guidance perspective, so almost acting as your chief technology officer for the organization, giving you direction around the strategy. We also provide a support service as well. And the aim for the sector is to provide proactive support. So I know the guys have talked about a lot of technology around security. So there's tools that we use, for example, where if somebody within the organization is deleting a lot of data, that will raise an alert instantly, and we can jump on that type of action to make sure that it is the user deleting that data rather than somebody that's actually accessed the environment. Documentation, really, really important. Understanding what you have, how it's set up and configured, why it's set up and configured in that particular way. And we want to lead all of the conversations based on the business. What are you trying to do as an organization? Where are you going? And how can you use technology in order to get there faster? So why does this matter? Well, the first thing you want to do is you need to protect your donations and your funds. I've seen organizations suffer with these types of attacks and these types of breaches. It has a huge impact on organizations. We want your team members to use their time in order to conduct your mission rather than working on manual processes that can be automated. So we want to make you more efficient. We want to improve your outcomes. So lots of talk about AI technology at the moment, but if you're using AI technology, you need the output to be better than what you have doing that manually currently. And then help you grow, help the organization grow, use technology to give you a competitive advantage. Now, as I've mentioned, we are a pure Microsoft end-to-end partner. So every product and service that Microsoft offer, we have a specific division and team that provide those particular products and services and can support you in that way. So, James, I know we've only got 5 minutes. There's a number of questions there. I don't know if you wanted to sort of cut over and we can just pick off a few of those questions that have been thrown out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Steve. Let me just roll through to the Q&A slide. There you go. Just looking at the Q&A, I think Ziad's been pretty busy in there and answering the security questions we had, just scrolling through. I think you've got one more question, Ziad, for George Martin around the Microsoft security score. I don't know if it's easy for you just to talk on that topic while we got you now.
Yes, so Microsoft Security Score is a really interesting tool which makes, discovering gaps in the environment across Microsoft 365 and, the devices managed by Microsoft 365, just to set the plan on, what areas needs to be addressed. So when you look at the security score, it's going to assess things like, identity, maturity, devices and the application. And what's really nice about the secure score is that it won't just point you in the right direction and tell you where the gaps are, but it will also give you the recommendation on what steps needs to be taken to remediate all of those gaps or risks, right? Even when we're looking at, the secure score and recommendations coming around devices, one of the most challenging things that we would normally face is, we would be worried on how the changes would impact the users, work. So what's really nice in Secure Score is that it will normally, give you analysis on how many users in your organization will be affected by changes. So let's say, for example, you're allowing macros to run on devices from removable media, right? So you might not be sure whether some departments have a need to have this allowed, right? So Microsoft will give you statistics on how many users used macros on removable media in the past 45 days, and then it will make it easy for you to take a decision on how to approach it, whether to, exclude those users and check with them if this is a business need before enforcing that policy. You're on mute, James.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just thinking as well around the secure score you can expect from the organization. And do note, I'm pretty sure, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but it benchmarks against the license you have. So if you're on a standard license, it can't see the premium capabilities. So I think just be wary of that model. Oh, go on, Ziad.
Yeah, so actually the nice thing is that it will not benchmark just based on the license. So let's say, for example, you're missing out a license, they will be benchmarking against things like CIS standards and so forth, right? But as long as your device is managed so that, Secure Score has the capacity to see things around devices and give recommendation, that's the kind of prerequisite you would want to have in place right? But let's say,
Yep.
for example, you have Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, which doesn't cover endpoint detection and respond and other capabilities. And maybe as part of the benchmarks, you should have that in place. So it will still tell you as a or give you a recommendation to, have this in place and how to apply it.
Great. Thank you. That's why, that's why you're on the call. Thank you very much. So,
yeah,
I believe there's a couple of AI related questions from Barbara, Steve, but maybe you might want to take that away. And we just had one in from James Nelson now, similar kind of theme. Is there any incorporation between Azure OpenAI and Copilot? Ziad, I don't know if I know you're cybersecurity, but that's for our AI team, is it, the takeaway? So, James, we'll take that away and we'll work with our AI practice and get back to you. I know Steve will be able to do that.
Yes,
I think that's pretty much, there you are. Clock's just moved forward. So that's 2:30. That is come to the end. So just to recap, absolutely, we will be sending an email to everyone that's attended. It will have a link to the video and the recording, and it will have the slides as well. And we will get that sent ASAP. It will be our mission this afternoon to work on that and get that to you straight away. Any questions, anything you want to dig into? You've seen how our head of that division works. So there's a plethora of knowledge and a pool of knowledge around that. So more than happy to talk further and discuss how we might share knowledge and help you later with this journey. So yeah, thank you everyone. Really appreciate you for joining, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.